Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the MC Squared podcast. My name is Andrew McNeil, and I'm joined today by my co-host Jimmy McKenna. And also, we have a special guest, Jeremy Touchet, who's going to be joining us, talking to us about awesome ministry here in Teroot, also sharing some of his life story. It's pretty exciting, episode 40. Let's go.
All the time to learn.
Welcome back, everybody. We're super excited to have Jeremy Touchet here with us, and I just want to remind you also to make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. We have 63 subscribers at this point, but a lot of viewers, and it really helps to motivate not only us, but other people to watch if you do subscribe at the bottom, and we appreciate that. You can like, comment. We usually do this at the end, but we're deciding to do it at the beginning this time.
Because some of you are not watching to the end.
That's right.
We can tell.
But you're going to watch today to the end for sure. So, super excited. We have Jeremy Touchet here from Adult and Teen Challenge. And how you doing, Jeremy?
Doing pretty good. Thank you guys for having me.
Welcome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, we want to start off. Would you just like to talk a little bit about maybe the ministry that you're a part of, and then we'll just get into some other things.
Yeah, so I run Wabash Valley Adult and Teen Challenge here in Terre Haute. We're a faith-based alcohol and drug recovery center for adult men. Okay. We have women's centers across the U.S. We have adolescent centers and, of course, men's centers across the U.S. We have 250 here in the U.S. and more than 1,000 worldwide.
Yeah. I know the first time I had heard of I think it was just called Teen Challenge at the time, was quite a few years ago, kind of when I was early on in my walk. I would listen to some Todd White. Mm-hmm. And so I remember Todd White talking about, if you haven't watched Todd White before, a cool dude, but talk about his time, a little bit of time at Teen Challenge. I remember looking it up at that point many years ago, and then finding out that we later had one in Terre Haute. And now at my church, we have one of your leaders actually goes to church with us, plays drums. Steve, he's awesome. And, every once in a while, you and your ministry show up for one of our services. So we're super excited about that. I love to see those men worshiping the Lord. It's really amazing, and it's very actually kind of convicting in a lot of ways to just the regular people at church. I feel like they are there in true worship, and it kind of, I feel like it revives almost the church a little bit, and some of those people that are used to being there. So, I guess, how did you get in the ministry? And you tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have heard of David Wilkerson. Mm-hmm. So just a little background on the ministry. In 1958, David Wilkerson heard the Lord tell him to go help these boys in New York City. He was reading a Time magazine, and there were these teenagers on trial for murder. Mm-hmm. And so, he listened to the voice of the Lord, went to New York City, and long story short, out of that was birthed Teen Challenge. He started ministering to the gangs and taking them in, and just a powerful moment in history, because that was over 60 years ago, and the ministry still has the same vision and still doing the same thing that David was doing, way back when. You had mentioned Teen Challenge. The program was so successful in the lives of teenagers that they said, let's try it with adult men and adult women, and like I said, it's blown up to 250 in the U.S. and more than 1,000 worldwide. My story. I was raised in a Christian home all of my life. My grandmother. We came out of a full gospel type background, and just kind of ran from the Lord all of my life. I knew that I had a calling, but just kind of ran from Him and got involved in in drugs and alcohol at a young age. I was 12 years old when I, took my first drink, and like if I would have known back then the road that it would have led me down, I would have never taken that first drink. And so, by the time I was 17 years old, I started trying marijuana, and 18, cocaine. By the time I was 23, 24 years old, I tried about every drug that you could possibly think of, and I was addicted. I was addicted to everything from alcohol to drugs, and over the course of that 20 years, I destroyed everything that I came in contact with, from my family to friends, even my own children. Addiction's ugly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just affect the individual, it affects everyone around that individual. And so a lot of pain, a lot of hurt over those 20 years. And I had gotten, long story short, I'd gotten in way over my head in addiction, and I was dealing drugs in Louisiana. I'm from Louisiana, and I found myself in a room with guys that I had no business being in this room with, and when I communicated to them that I didn't want to be a part of it. I knew that I was in over my head, and it was scary. And when I communicated to them that I didn't want to be a part of it anymore, just wanted out of that, they made an attempt to kill me. And looking back today, I see it was God that made a way of escape for me that day. And that's when I started hitting my rock bottom, because I'd see these vehicles driving around my house, and I knew it was a matter of time before I walked out my house and got shot, or someone broke into my house and ended up killing me. And my life truly came to a point where it wasn't if I was going to die, it was when I was going to die and how I was going to die. And like I said, I was raised in a Christian home, and my grandmother told me all my life, Jeremy, in your time of need, call on the name of Jesus. And I knew enough to know that's what I needed to do. And so, I began to call on the name of Jesus, and man, God just began to send these good Samaritans into my life, and they helped me get to Teen Challenge. And the crazy part of it, at 12 years old, when I took that first drink, the guys that I was with, they were older than me. They were my brother's age, and one of those guys that I was with, I remember he went to Teen Challenge, and I didn't know much about it, but Teen Challenge had always stuck in the back of my mind all my life. And I knew that this guy had become a pastor and heard stories, and so I started looking up Teen Challenge, and like I said, those good Samaritans helped me to get to Teen Challenge. I went to North Carolina, and when I tell you God radically,
Hey, Bear.
got a visitor. All right. Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
He broke loose. Sorry, Jimmy.
Awesome. No worries. No worries.
That's our Saint-Berdoodle.
Yeah.
Saint-Berdoodle.
Beautiful dog.
Yeah, we got him for free because he was missing one ear.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you couldn't tell? You didn't go
No,
look
I
at him?
didn't get it. No.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Yeah,
carry
we're
it.
really sorry.
Yeah.
We'll cut that out or something.
no worries.
Maybe
Maybe we'll add it. Who knows? That was kind of funny.
Yeah. Going into Teen Challenge, I knew that my life was going to change. I just didn't realize to what extent my life was going to change. God radically, and I mean radically, changed my life. And I haven't looked back since the day that he broke those chains.
Were you saved, or did you give your heart to the Lord prior to going back in, going into Teen Challenge?
Yeah, I was.
Or were you going just to get fixed, or just
Yeah, growing up in a Christian home, I remember at 9, 10 years old,
Yeah.
giving my heart
Yeah.
to Jesus, and my pastor telling me that there was a calling on my life, and so I was never comfortable in my addiction. Because,
Which is God's mercy.
yeah, because I knew that there was more.
Yeah.
But I really believed with everything in me that, the addiction was so bad that I was going to be this way the rest of my life. I heard stories of people getting free, and I was just like, yeah, right, man, because like the detox, all of that stuff is just hard. It's absolutely horrible. And so, I'd see people with, these years of sobriety, and I had a hard time buying into it. Here's the thing, though, I knew about God. I knew his scripture. I could argue with the best of them. I knew how to hurt people with scripture, growing up. But I didn't know him personally.
Yeah.
And when I truly met him at Teen Challenge, like I said, my life was radically changed. And so I went through the program of Teen Challenge. It's a year-long program. Like I said earlier, it's like a spiritual boot camp. Every minute, every second of the day is accounted for. We develop these bad habits, and don't want to be obedient to rules, and rebellious, and all of these things. And that's what's so powerful about Teen Challenge is it's not the concern isn't just about a drug addict. Like the addiction to us is a symptom of something that's rooted so much deeper. And until you get to that root, you're going to continue to mask it with alcohol and drugs. And so, for me, it was, not having a father. I didn't realize how bad that affected me until, we started peeling back the layers of my life. And I realized that had affected me deeply in my life. And so I masked the hurt and pain with drugs and alcohol. And so,
Is that something you see a lot, and just amongst the men that come into the program? What would you say percentage-wise have had a dysfunctional relationship with their father?
Oh man, a lot. Probably 70-80% of the guys. Yeah, something else people don't realize. And I like numbers. I like and a lot of these guys, I would say 80 to 85% of these guys have dealt with sexual abuse somewhere along the line in their life. And the hard part about it is men feel like less than to talk about it. And so, a lot of times they'll go through the program, never talk about that thing, and end up back in the program because they didn't deal with it. I don't know how many times that has happened, where a guy will come back and be like, Pastor Jeremy, like, I got something I need to tell you. And then you start seeing the freedom.
Oh, I bet. I can imagine.
In them. So yeah, it's really a powerful program. Another thing that I believe makes it a powerful program is a lot of the, talking about Steve, a lot of the guys that graduate our program stay and serve in the program. And so when a staff member tells a student, I understand what you're going through, he literally understands what you're going through. And so the compassion is there, and the connection is there. Of course, we have guys that's worked in the ministry. David Wilkerson never struggled with drugs and alcohol, but he had a heart for the broken. And so it's really cool to see these men come into our program, completely broken in every way, and throughout the course of a year, watch God put every piece back together and make them whole. And another cool thing that I love is, like, while God's working on that man, he's by default working on that man's family. And so God's into restoration, so we see a lot of that
That's
too.
awesome.
And I think it's interesting that, and I know that when we were at that benefit recently, a lot of your men that are in there gave their testimony, and many of them had a church background growing up, and they had some type of basis growing up, and then in those middle kind of years, do you see that a lot? Where they have a background and they like, so they have a seed that's planted, and in the case of you, it was a seed for leadership that was seen in you at a young age, and I just think that's so amazing that's is able to the Lord that's there, that's down deep. It's just waiting for the chance that it's watered
Yeah,
and brought out.
yeah,
Man,
yeah. We see that a lot. When we do the church services, a lot of times, I warn people, like, and the enemy, like, that's like a metal to him, to get your children, to try and rob your children, being from a Christian home, like the
Right.
target's on your child's back, the target's on your family's back, and he grows up, he goes after them, but train up a child in the way that they should go.
Yeah.
That scripture's so true.
oh, so true. It's so true. When they grow old.
Yeah, well, and with 7 kids of my own, and you've got four,
Yeah.
and you you really, you raise them as best you know how in the Lord. But boy, you really do hold on to the promise from the Lord that even if they've wandered or if they wander, that God will bring them back.
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing, not to get off track, but the hardest thing with older kids is that you can't control them anymore. Once they get at that age. You're there as a mentor or a friend or a protector, helper, but boy, God's really got to take up for them where they need, and you see the Lord's faithfulness, but man, it's not easy being on the sidelines watching that sometimes as a parent.
Yeah, you have to be careful not to push too hard because, they go through these rebellious stages and it's like, but like God answered my grandmother's prayers from her grave. You know what I mean? Like she was faithful in praying for me, my mother as well. And so God's faithful.
Yeah.
He will bring back the prodigals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk about briefly. You said you before we started recording, you'd only been here in Terre Haute a little while. Talk about that. Talk about coming back to Terre Haute. What's your?
Yes.
You were from Louisiana, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So after graduating the Adult and Teen Challenge program, I went back home to Louisiana. So I was raised in like full gospel type Assemblies of God type setting, and the Lord called me to serve at a Baptist church. And, you talk about two totally different worlds.
Did you need to get saved there first before
Right,
they would let you in the door?
Yeah, no, it was. God taught me when I was in Teen Challenge. We would go and visit these different churches because even though we're under the Assembly of God covering, I believe that we're everyone's missionary for the drug addict and alcoholic. Right, it's in every church. Some people know someone that's been affected by it, or they know someone that knows someone that's been affected by it, and so. And I started hearing, all these different, denominational differences and things, and so I was like, God, you teach me, you show me through your word, because I get it. Some have their flaws, others have their flaws, but they also have so much good in all of them. So, and God opened the door, and so I was a youth pastor and an associate pastor at a Baptist church, which was really cool because, like I lost my reputation a long time ago. I don't care what people think about me, you know what I mean? So I was like raising my hands in the church and worshiping God, and so by the time I left, you know, that church was raising their hands and praising God, and you know, I think they helped me go deeper in my study habits, and so it was today I call myself a spiritual mutt. You know, I
can relate to that.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I could worship and serve in any church, man, as long as God's there. And so, you know, after that, I don't know if you know Jay Nickerson. He had passed away a while back. He was running the Teen Challenge here.
Okay.
And, you know, though I was a pastor in a church, my heart was always with the drug addict and the alcoholic because I knew him so well. Like, that was my passion. And so I started reaching out to Teen Challenges and talked to Jay, and he brought me up here. I became the assistant director for him for a couple of years, and really felt overwhelmed, like I was trying to do everything from, you know, teaching classes to running the center, and you know, he had a job, and so he wasn't there much, and you know, 2 years of it just kind of got overwhelmed, and stepped away from ministry, kind of ran from God a little bit. You know, went to Louisiana, and you know, that's where I met my wife, and you know, I had you know, I had been in broken relationships before, had children. I was wild when I was young, and I remember telling God, I don't care, and I truly meant this in my heart. God, I don't care if I'm ever with another woman again. I just want to serve you. And and one day I was reading in the book of Genesis, and I thought that I had like exhausted my studies in Genesis, right? I knew the book of Genesis, and I'm reading one day, and it was Genesis 2:22, and it says, "And the rib that the Lord took from Adam, he made into a woman, and he brought the woman to the man." There's like a light bulb went off. Like, never in my life have I ever allowed God to. Like, I was always pursuing relationships.
That's really good.
And it wasn't long after that I met my wife, and man, it's just been, I mean, different. Just totally different. God is at the center, and it's been you know, amazing. We've been married you know, 10 years now, and so we came here after we got married, and haven't looked back. We've been serving here. When we got here, the ministry was kind of in trouble, and the state director told me, he said, "Jeremy, you know, if it doesn't work with you, I think that we're going to close the door." So it was really on the brink of shutting down. And I was like, okay, no pressure. You know, we're all the way up here, and
you're right, exactly.
You
We
know,
put our lives on the line here. That's great.
My wife up to Teroot.
Right. And our families, you know, back in Louisiana, and you know, like I said, the ministry was $30,000 in debt, and man, God just, you know, when you just try and serve the Lord faithfully and trust in Him, and don't do things in your own power, like, God shows up every time. And so, you know, the Lord brought us out of debt. You know, 2 years ago we became a debt-free ministry.
That's awesome.
We own all of our buildings, all of, you know, everything. And so it's really been beautiful to watch what God's done at Wabash Valley Adult Teen Challenge.
Now, the guys that come in now, are they mainly from Vigo County, or are they from all over?
They're from all over. You know, we work with different court systems. You know,
That's awesome.
we have a pretty good relationship here, but we have relationships with different counties where we'll go in, bring applications, talk to guys. So some of them are court mandated. I like to say some of them are mom mandated and wife mandated. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so, yeah, from all over, all across the U.S. Yeah.
Wow.
So when the guys are in and maybe they have the family at home, you said that God's doing a work on that family. Is there things that Teen Challenge are you doing what type of communication do they get with their family? Do they get much, or is that just a completely God thing that's happening as the man's being restored?
Yeah, it's a God thing, and the family begins to see what God's doing in their lives, and so they begin to like, okay, what is this? Even if they don't know God, they're like, what is this? And then, of course, we always recommend, that they seek some kind of help too, because they've been damaged, along the way. Like I said, addiction's ugly, and so that's a beautiful thing to watch when whole families are restored and marriages are restored, and but yeah, it's we always give out this enabling package as well, because a lot of families give the wrong kind of love.
Yeah.
And they don't even realize that they're causing more damage by continuing to help. Most of the time it's moms are the last ones to let go, and they don't realize sometimes they're doing more damage than good. They're actually killing them, and they don't realize it. And so a lot of times the question is, well, what if I don't feed them, or what if I don't give them money and they end up dead? Well, what if you give them that money and they take drugs and die on fentanyl? Because we see it, and so they have to learn to draw a line in the sand and set boundaries as well. But yeah.
So do you see that a lot of your graduates come back in and actually are then a part of the ministry? Do you see that a lot, or just in a few of them?
About half will come back. Some of them are far away, and it's hard for them to come back. We had at the banquet, we had a whole table full of our graduates. I don't know if you noticed, but that was always awesome, because I know for me, when someone would come back with 5 years, 10 years, like that was so encouraging for me. Like, okay, they're really doing this.
Yeah, because that's long term.
Yeah,
that's a long term fix.
Yeah, like if he could do it for 15 years, like I have a chance here, and so I love when our graduates come back, because I know how encouraging it was for me, and those students look up to those guys. I know I did. Something else that I'm really proud of is, we have a 78% success rate.
That's good.
That's so good.
When you think about that, that's almost 8 out of 10 men never go back to drugs and alcohol again.
Phenomenal.
It really is.
Yeah.
There's probably nothing
amazing.
like it. There's nothing like it, right? There's no.
It's the
type
Jesus
of
factor, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's no program that is near that.
No, most of your secular programs are, I think, around 12 to 15%. Last time I checked, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer to me. It's and again, it's because we're concerned about the whole man. Not just that drug addict. Like we're concerned about the man as a husband, as a son, as a father, as an employee. Like we work on every aspect of that person. Once we get to the root, we teach them, how to have respect for authority. How to respect man, how to be obedient to man, how to be obedient to, law enforcement. Like today, I go out of my way. I see a cop,
Yeah.
I go out of my way to buy them coffee or whatever. So we teach them to, to be the priest of their homes, and so powerful. And I'd been to the 30-day, and most of the guys will tell you this. They've been to the 30-day program, the 60-day, the 90-day. Do good for a while, your brain's just beginning to heal, and then you fall flat on your face. And I know for me, I did that over and over, and I couldn't figure out, why can't I get this? Teen Challenge is a year long for a reason.
Yeah.
You could go through some things, deal with those deep-rooted issues, and you realize, you know what? I could depend on Jesus.
Yeah.
I could really depend on Jesus. I don't have to go back to that lifestyle. I think that's why, a year-long program is really important.
Yeah.
It gives you that time, to really experience some things.
Yeah. What's it like, if you can share this, like a day in the life of one of your men?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like a spiritual boot camp. Our program here, and in each program across the board is different in their own ways, but in the majority of the ways we're the same, right? And so, our program, our guys wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. At 6:05, their feet have to be on the floor, not 6:06. If it's 6:06, you get written up, you get disciplined, and our discipline's designed to help them, right? It's not to punish them, but it's to correct the bad behaviors that they have. And so, they get up, they brush their teeth. They have a very rigorous and tight schedule, and so they'll brush their teeth, take care of everything, make their beds. They have a time limit to get that done, and then they'll eat breakfast. We'll do a devotion with them. Usually it's a proverb in the morning. Proverb a day keeps the enemy away, man.
That's so good.
Yeah, and so after breakfast, they'll do their chores. Each guy has a different chore that he's, designated to do. And then we inspect those chores. You can't expect unless you inspect,
Yeah.
And so, we have interns, and it's a discipleship program is really what we are at the core of who we are. And then they'll get ready for their work day. Because most of the guys that come into our program, they can't afford to pay for the program.
Yeah.
And so we've partnered with different companies in the community. Red Brick, Ben Linderman, I'm not sure if you know him. He's one of them. There's a factory that we work with, and just a couple of different companies. And so they'll go out, do their work detail. Even in that, we're teaching them. We call it work therapy, and so that money goes to help kind of supplement, their time here, from the meals to the books to, helping running the program. In the afternoon, they come back. We have 14 different what we call group studies that the guys go through. There's 2 different phases to the program. We have an induction phase and then a senior phase. And so for the first 4 months, they'll do the GSNL, the group study. And then when they graduate that, they go into the senior classes where we get in more detail with biblical portrait of marriage. What is it like? What's your role as a husband? What does that look like? For me, it blew my mind because I had no idea who I was supposed to be as a man, much less a husband or a father. And then we'll teach them books of the Bible. We'll go through the the book of Ephesians or Romans, just different books. Safe people, what it's like to be around truly safe people. That, what is it like to be around dangerous people?
Yeah.
So we have a plethora of different classes. We also use the Beta Satan. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it.
John Bevere.
Yeah, great book. We teach that class.
So they don't get offended anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
That's true.
yeah, and it's
That's true. It's good.
It's really funny when we're teaching like these classes, everyone starts getting offended. And, like all these things start surfacing.
Yeah.
Anger. We have one called Anger and Personal Rights, and like everybody's angry. It's like, you know what I mean? And
I know my rights.
and so we minister out of that.
Yeah.
And so they have classes, 3 classes in the evening, and then the Psalms at night. We go through Psalms, and then we have on different days we have prayer and teach them how to pray and do devotions and worship and spiritual emphasis week,
awesome.
all kinds of stuff. And then of course we visit the different churches as well. But we also it's not just class all the time or work or whatever. Like we want them to have fun too.
Right.
Like you can have fun without being on a substance, and so we'll take them to Holiday World. We'll take them on kayaking trips. One year we brought them to Louisiana, showed them what a bull crawfish was like. my family cooked for them.
Oh yeah.
And so we try to do different fun events with them as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder if you find that if they were stuck in those addictions early on, if they never really experienced any kind of fun
Right.
or anything, even
Right.
going to Holiday World, which a lot of us take for granted. They never experienced that,
Yeah.
and now they're able to in the program, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome. How many guys do you have enrolled right now?
We have 11. We have 11 students. One intern right now, and then there's a third phase to the program, and it's called Reentry. So when you graduate, you have the option to stay on as an intern and keep growing, or you could go into our Reentry program where you actually go out, find a job. You have a little apartment on our campus. Yeah, we remodeled that a couple of years ago and put some little apartments for them. And that's a 6-month program where they go find a job. They stay accountable to us, and kind of like a little safety net for those guys. And we have one guy in there right now. So probably about 13 guys altogether.
Yeah. Do you have capacity for a lot more, or?
Yeah, in one building, our main building, we could hold up to 17 guys.
Yeah.
The campus next door where the Reentry's at, we could hold 6 there.
Yeah. An apartment.
But we try and stay balanced where staff's not outnumbered. We're hoping to open a thrift store this year.
Yeah.
Where we could become more self-sufficient.
Yep.
And bring some other people on where we could fill all of those beds.
Yeah.
We want to help as many people as possible.
Yeah.
I know that when your ministry has come to our church, and there's always an opportunity for each one of the men to come, and they stand in front of the church and they share their testimony, which I'm sure they get somewhat good at, but it seems like it's a challenge. I mean, because they hand the mic down and each one of them shares their testimony,
Really,
and it's really amazing. I remember I'll bring up one name that it stands out so much to me is Adrian, little Adrian. And I remember he came to our church many years ago, and he got up and I'm pretty sure he was in the program at the time, and he spoke. And it's the Lord has like this amazing call on some of these, on probably all these men, but some of them you're just like, oh my goodness. Like, this is really amazing. I remember him giving a testimony and thinking, this kid has, like, an amazing calling on his life. Oh, my goodness. And, but every single person, I mean, most people in a church would just crumble before they get up in front and give a testimony, right? But these guys are going to different churches and doing that. I just think it's such an amazing way to almost use like the things they've been taught in trusting in the Lord and what they've been through to work through that, almost like that stressful time of being up there. And you almost, and then in their worship, it's just amazing. It's like I said earlier, it's challenging for people that, you know that these guys are in this program, and, you know, they have had pasts that have been really, really tough. And they worship the Lord like there's nothing else.
Yeah.
And I feel like the church, as members of the church, it's almost like my worship is even stronger in honor of them. I mean, it's really, I don't know. I just always sense that whenever the group shows up. So
We hear that everywhere we
really?
go. Everywhere we go, yeah. Because, you know, just knowing what some of these guys have been through, you know, when God forgives you, when you feel like you shouldn't be forgiven, and you know the things that you did and the things that you were capable of, it's, you know, like you have no choice. But, you know what I mean? It's like, and there's such a liberty and a freedom in that, and they really express it, and it's true worship, you know. It's pure. And it's contagious. It's contagious.
Yeah.
One of my favorite evangelists came out of Teen Challenge, Steve Hill. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
Love Steve.
Steve Hill, and he met his wife Jerry. She was in the same program, but his testimony was just awesome. Of course, Steve's gone home to be with the Lord not too many years ago, but evangelist for the Brownsville revival, and so good. I remember we had lost, and I've shared about losing my brother David several episodes ago, but while we were still grieving as a family and everything, we went down and heard Steve Hill preach that night. We went down to Brownsville, and he preached that night on the title of it was Legacy, and it was just such a good, it's one of my favorite sermons that he did. Besides the death of Mr. Me, where he came out with a coffin, and he had a lot of props and stuff, really good. But talked about Keith Green. He talked which Keith Green was affiliated with Teen Challenge. I don't know if he went, but he was, because he knew Wilkerson and Leonard Ravenhill and all those guys. My other favorite guy that's still alive actually is he's from New Zealand. Wilkie. Anyway, I'll have to remember his name. He's a Christian. Okay, he's a Christian scientist, not a Christian scientist, but a Christian.
That is a scientist. That is a scientist.
There we go.
Okay.
But he preached on legacy. Steve Hill did, and just talked about Rich Mullins, who passed away, and Keith Green, same kind of thing. And then and all that was encompassing at the same time. God was doing a work in my life and my family's life, and having just lost David, who also had that legacy of loving the Lord, to the end. It was just something I'll never forget. And there was hundreds of thousands of people came to the Lord through his ministry, and he was rock bottom too before he went. Same thing, drug addiction, and But I think when he told some of his stories about Teen Challenge, a lot of it was Steve. I do this, Steve, because I said Steve. Why? Why should I have to do that? Why? And it was always because I said Steve. And I think he actually went with David Wilkerson. I think, him personally. But No, a lot of good fruit, and just
amazing.
just an awesome fruit from even David Wilkerson's life.
Oh yeah,
just amazing
for sure. Yeah, David, Ravenhill and man, Steve Hill was just a hit. Talk about like punch a pastor in the face, man. Man, he would just give it to you. Like if you're not convicted by the time he's done, like I love it though, man. I love.
Well, listen, Ravenhill, I never actually heard Ravenhill talk. I've just heard enough quotes. But I think he was the one that Steve Hill got back, and he was an evangelist at this time. Got back from Argentina, and he wanted to see Leonard Ravenhill, and he just kind of like messaged him, called him or whatever. Hey, I'd love to meet you sometime. And Leonard Ravenhill goes, okay, right now. I've got about in an hour. And Steve's like, no, you don't understand. I just got in from my flight. And he goes, no, now. And he goes, I drove over there so mad, so angry. And he goes, I walk in the door and he hands me a card. And the card says, blessed is he who's not offended by man, or something like that. And he's like, just typical. But, we don't have that style of Christianity hardly anymore today.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's everybody's soft and very offended.
Yeah.
Offendable. And, if you're going to walk with the Lord long enough, God's going to find a way to offend you. If it's not man, because he wants you loving him, not because of what he can do for you, even though he's amazing and awesome. But it's kind of like God given the promise to Abraham of Isaac. But then also, I need him now. How offended Abraham could have been with God. But so
the word's offensive.
Yeah,
the word's offensive, and it should be, like it should affect me, because like no one's without sin.
That's
it
right.
should rub you raw.
Yeah.
Whether it upsets you or not, it should force you to want to do better.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It is. Pastor Jeremy, we appreciate you being here. This has been really amazing to hear about your story, about this ministry, about you getting into this ministry. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners or future listeners, current listeners?
Yeah.
About the Lord?
Yeah, I'll speak to the ministry of Teen Challenge. If you're out there struggling with addiction, if you know someone that's struggling with addiction, there is help out there. And, reach out to someone. If it's not, Adult and Teen Challenge, reach out to someone and get help, because you don't have to live in addiction. And I'd also say, if you've been affected by addiction, people don't realize that they need help as well. Yeah. Like they need to recover as well, because it affects the whole family. And so that, that would be, kind of my...
Yeah.
Do you have an email, or what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
So we have a shortcut on our website. It's wvtc.life, and it'll bring you to our website. Our phone number's on there. It'll show you how to get in touch with us. It has all of the statistics that we have as well. And if you're female or you're dealing with an adolescent, we can point you in the right direction as well.
Okay.
And they can also, at that website, give to your ministry.
Yep. Yeah. We have, a couple of different ways to give. One's on the website itself, or, you could send a donation to P.O. Box 3288 here in Terre Haute. As well.
Awesome. That's
fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here today.
Yeah.
This has been amazing, and we thank you all for watching. We appreciate you too. We appreciate that you made it to the end with us, and join us next time. We'll see you in a few weeks. For now, later.
See ya.
God bless.